Hey, it's Monday, June 12th. Real Madrid's Ronaldo makes the FIFA 18 cover. Far Cry 5 is causing a lot of controversy, but today I've got freelance writer Delfeir and Rain World level and sound designer James Primate with me. Let's start the show.
Let's play.
So today we start with a basic concept that we all have to agree on in order to move forward, or else you might as well turn around right now. Video games are art. From concept to development to the ultimate release and then the reception, gaming embodies all that it takes to make art. Merriam-Webster cites the definition of art as the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Games have drawn out all of these things that make it a work of art. This piece, the Suprematist composition, sold for over $60 million and is supposed to represent a constellation of geometry and color. While a simple concept and seemingly random shapes put together on one canvas, beneath is what some say is a complicated piece of art in a series done by the same artist. Books and literature, movies on both the big and small screens, even the art piece we just showed. Don't video games incorporate all of these elements? Those who disagree with games as an art form must think that games like pinball or checkers count in this. And there's been multiple court cases that have given gaming the credit that they deserve. 2011 Supreme Court case Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association reads that like the protected books, plays, and movies that preceded them, video games communicate ideas and even social messages. So if this Oscar-winning film...
You otherwise irritate or vex me, and guess what? You die.
I'm known to be quite vexing. I'm just forewarning you.
Lady, shut up!
is as protected a form of artistic expression as this video game?
Movies. Deciding which shirt goes with which skirt. It's bizarre.
Get up. We're leaving. Come on.
And if I say no?
Do you even realize what your life means? Huh? Running off like that, putting yourself at risk? It's pretty goddamn stupid.
Well, I guess we're both disappointed with each other then.
Then please tell me the validity in statements like Hideo Kojima, a former VP of Konami, who said that video games are intrinsically popular but don't serve niche interests like art. Or when two founding members of Telltales tried to make an edgy spin by creating anti-games, but then boasted this image. But in the same breath have the statement, art is born out of a desire to touch the untouchable, to explore the unknown or pay tribute to it. Art is born out of a desire for transcendence. Furthermore, they said, but above all, art is a journey made by a person. And sure, they tried to clean it up later. It's saying that games are systematic and rule-based. But meanwhile, they, along with others, are clearly unaware of games like Minecraft or other sandbox games that players have never stopped creating in, no matter what version it was, for fun, expanding their imaginations, and often for no reason at all, but because they love and enjoy it. They are making a journey on their own as people, and that is art. For more on art, implementation, and design of video gaming, we go to my interview with fellow freelance writer and GameSkinny.com writer, Delfeir. So yeah, really I just want to start it with, what were your like early influences in gaming that like really made you want to get into freelance writing or, really just start playing too?
Well, I've been playing video games for most of my life for various reasons, introduced by parents early on, and just found it an interesting way to experience all sorts of interesting worlds, stories, concepts, and just went from there. So the GameSkinny writing is kind of a logical extension of that, because I also picked up writing at some point. Probably a favorite game to this day is still Baldur's Gate 2. That was the first real introduction, well, the first Baldur's Gate was my first real introduction into Western RPGs, because up to that point I'd only really dabbled in Pokemon, similar things like that.
Yeah.
But it was Baldur's Gate 2 that just made me go, wow, you can get some really great stories and characters in these games, and just opened my eyes to that whole possibility more and more, and that became what I started looking for. In later years, Supergiant Games produced Bastion, which was a huge game for me. That was just like, oh wow, you can really do stuff with art and story and presentation, and just loved it. And then the follow-up, Transistor, was equally amazing, and they have a new game coming out soon, which will be a day one purchase.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of games, especially now, you'll notice in like, or at least I'll notice in comment sections and Reddit threads, like when a game is initially announced or there's a trailer released, it's sort of like this big wave of basically really just the hype train that follows it, and then it just sort of immediately comes down to like criticisms and, you know, negative backlash. What's been your like your gauge for that? Have you noticed that sort of trend? Do you think it's not that way?
Oh no, I definitely agree with it. The hype train is definitely a phenomenon, I guess, of the times, and continues to increase to the point where the gaming player base in general seems to be extremely harsh or extremely fervent in both positive and negative aspects, I feel. So they'll hype something up as soon as it's there and then immediately look to criticize it. But the criticism usually only starts the moment the hype ends, which is anytime there's a lull in between details, information. If you're able to provide a steady stream of content and keep these people interested, then more often to avoid a lot of the opening criticisms and stuff. But video game journalism in general is a lot of, well, free marketing almost. So
would be like sort of maybe advice you could give too, just from your own personal knowledge too of gaming, of like for developers who are looking for that, you know, pushing those deadlines of window releases. What would be your advice sort of to make sure that they're listening to community responses, but also in following games after that for whatever's next too, making sure that they're, you know, keenly aware of that community response?
Clarity. Straight up, just be clear to the community, answer questions, you know, talk about mechanics and what's in the game and what's not in the game, in particular, in depth. Don't promise the world, or at least promise a big, you know, empty, gaping pile of questions that go unanswered, because then people will fill in the blanks and assume too much.
Yeah.
And that kind of negative whiplash will kill you faster than anything you can do.
Very true. And do you think that, maybe more so just like a broader question too, that when game developers are going into a game, regardless of the type that it is, what would be your advice to them as far as designing for the player? So designing things, we talked about the community response and, you know, having clarity on their end, but what do you think that they should focus on before they even really get to those steps of answering questions to, you know, having a trailer release, just in sort of designing how the players will interact in the game, in any game?
I mean, there are so many different ways you can approach game development and what kind of game you want. So it's tough to say and keep it concise, but my advice is always, whatever you're doing, and this is always the way I approach video game reviews and such in particular, is no matter how deep or interesting or involved or artsy your video game is, it's a video game first and foremost, and will be judged on that. So make sure it's something people want to play. Make sure it plays well. And then anything else you can expand on and develop is, you know, important, and can definitely lift a game with average or mediocre gameplay higher. But generally, the stronger the video game is at the base, the stronger the framework you can build from. So make sure, the framework is strong, the foundations are strong before you go too deep into anything or try and start, generating controversy just to attract things that your game may not necessarily be able to support. No Man's Sky again.
In order to truly understand how the world of video gaming can be encapsulated within the world of art, I spoke to sound and level designer James Primate from Rainworld. Hey James, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, Nick? Thanks for having me.
It's going pretty good. So basically the reason I wanted to bring you on too, in addition to our like overall topic for the episode, is that really we've seen interviews from you before Rainworld came out and like the hype train all the way up to it, and now that it's come out, like, yeah, exactly, like what's been like the, I'll just start with like the community response, and then if you want to go into like official reviews and stuff like that, like what have you heard so far?
Oh, as far as feedback on Rainworld, it's been a wild journey. Like for us, so Jor and myself, sort of the original core duo of Rainworld, we've been working on this project for about 5 years now. I think you know that. I think some of the audience knows that, but some of the other listeners, it's been quite a journey. Like it started out definitely as like a sort of basement art project that we were doing for our own personal interests. We had some specific things we wanted to explore in the game. We wanted like AI agency, like what believable ecosystems and things like that. And these are really just like our own personal interests that we were fiddling around with. And then it kind of got a lot of attention because it didn't look like a regular game. It didn't kind of behave in a regular game. So people were like, oh, this is something interesting.
True, and I just want to like run through real quick, sort of just looking through reviews, looking through like comment sections about Rainworld, like a couple words that like came out like pretty often were beautiful, described it, dark, as well as harsh. And then on Steam, the actual part of a description for the game is, the world around you is full of danger and you must face it alone. So just talking about that sort of like feeling, how when you went into developing like really just basic like concepts, maybe in like that first year, when you were deciding on that tone, how did you decide on, I want this to be like a sort of like emotional response, I want it to feel dark and to, you know, have that same then brooding like sound as well? Like how did all those elements come together in the very beginning?
Oh yeah, that was, I mean, I think very naturally. So in the very beginning, Jor, the original programmer and the designer, he had this very he had basically an alpha demo for this game that he was calling Maze Runner. And if you looked at Maze Runner and you looked at Rainworld now, even though it's 6 years apart, there's almost no difference between it. You have this little slug cat creature who's surrounded by this like kind of dark environment, and you have this kind of this very obvious contrast of like this creature that you project into and you empathize with and you want to keep alive, and then you have kind of this dangerous like dark brooding world. And I think from there, pretty much every aspect of the game kind of came out of the initial emotional response of like seeing that creature. Like I remember when I was initially getting involved with the game, I saw it on TigSource, which is like one of the indie game development forums. Yeah. And I immediately heard a complete sound world, and I basically like I wrote all of the music in my head almost within the first couple of minutes of seeing it. I wrote 12 songs over the course of like the next couple of days and sent it to Jor and was like, okay, this is my concept for the audio. What do you think about it? And he liked it, and we wound up working together. But like we use most of those initial 12 songs in the final soundtrack 6 years later, 6 years and like 150 other audio tracks later. Yeah. So it's always been there. It hit a really specific spot for the two of us that we felt hadn't really been explored or wasn't explored in the ways that we would see them in games before that. So once we kind of tapped into this this mood which I think you completely accurately described it. Like the game for us, it's like a mood piece. Like we want to create an environment that you're sort of living in and have this emotional response to. But once we tapped into that, it was just like we had so much from that, and that's basically been the past 6 years.
Yeah, right.
Based off of just that.
Well, yeah, and you brought up the actual the music and the track pieces. People can actually buy the full original soundtrack and buy it as a bundle on Steam as well with the game. What went into maybe just sort of naming the tracks? How did you sort of come up with the naming for them? Did you follow a sort of story arc, or was it just sort of this one's good, and throw it in that way?
That's a really good question, actually. And this is, I don't know if fans really want to know this, but initially most of the tracks were just named numbers.
Yeah.
Because there's sort of the section that they were going to go in. It didn't seem very romantic or anything like that. It's this is Rain World track 2. This is Rain World track 27. And the game is really open world, and you can experience it in a lot of different ways. So in making this, making the soundtrack from that, we took 40 songs from the 160 that are in the game and sort of put it into a narrative arc. So where we sort of expected people would experience them, and kind of how it would flow from one song to the next song, relating to where an ideal player might be in the game. And then some of the titles came from that. I hope that sort of explained or just answers the question.
No, yeah, I think it does. I mean, because just you personally, you've worked on other games where you've done the music for them, and they were their mood was very different, I would say. Even just looking at totally. the cover art for the games, all of them in these bright happy colors, this is this sort of arcade looking game, and then you have Rain World, it's just these dark reds, and then all of a sudden you see this little slug gut down there. So how was it maybe compared to those other ones when you went into it?
Oh, that's a great question and a great observation. So when the initial my early career as a video game music composer was coming from chiptune, where I had a band with my co-writer Lydia, Bright Primate, where we did kind of fun dancey chiptune music. And so we everyone associates chiptune with arcade games and kind of the bright, happy, fast stuff. And we had been doing that for a while, and kind of being pigeonholed in that category, because when people were looking for chiptune music, they weren't looking for dark, passionate, or moody. They were looking for kind of that fast, Mario music or Sonic the Hedgehog, those classic bouncy tunes. And so for me, I think Rain World was really my way of being able to take all of the pent up other moods that I had for all the years previous, 11 other soundtracks, and then kind of put them all into this one. So it really allowed me to explore these different sounds and these different sensibilities.
Just in going through the track names, you see there is a narrative arc. Did you see once maybe the game came out, did you think, oh, maybe one track could have gone here, or maybe if you were playing it yourself and you're in a room, you're oh, maybe this one should have been here instead, or anything like that?
That's kind of tricky, because since the game is open world, I'm not sure. A lot of the songs were written for specific moments or scenes in the game where you come across a certain vista or a certain scene, and it's kind of the emotion that we would to a player of the slug cat, experiencing that. For most of it, the concept was kind of that those tracks would be the emotional state of the character. Yeah, so they're kind of based on that. I think obviously if I were to do a best of a remix album or something like that, I'd probably put some of the peppier tracks up front. So I think when people first go into it, it's kind of heavy. It's this slow synth music. Yeah. And then some raindrops and 7-minute long tracks and things like that. And then kind of that's the thing, maybe 20 tracks into it, then you're now here's the hard hitting tunes. Yeah, right. But yeah, I think it was more important for us to, or for me to actually show the arc of the game, rather than to be here's my hot track. Yeah, here's the best one. Yeah, exactly.
Just in those those like concept arts that were released, we sort of see in most of them, the main character Slugcat is sort of like looking out beyond. It's like he's very small, maybe in the foreground, and in the background there's like these giant like landscape sort of images. Was that
Yeah.
did you like want to convey that because that Slugcat is a very small part of this like large ecosystems that the players will be going into?
Yeah. No, you got it 100%. See, this is why I like talking with proper critics, because you got the entire content. Like, the thing that we did, that we really wanted to do with Rain World, was create a world. I mean, video games is a medium where pretty much everything, generally speaking, is catered to the player experience, right? Like, every step of the way is just everything in the world, generally speaking, is placed there for the player, right? Like, you have nothing else in the world exists other than what the player is experiencing, right? That's like that's generally how you create a game. We wanted to do something where there was a world kind of self-contained unto itself. So the focus of the game was essentially the world, was Rain World, and you were just like one little piece of this ecosystem, and you're moving through it, but you can feel that there's things going outside of it. The creatures that are in the game, they all have complete agency as much as the character does. They have the same like right to exist that the player does. They're not just there as like obstacles to like get past or like things to kill. They have lives outside of the game, and in the game they're moving around, they're hunting food, they're finding shelter and getting into territorial squabbles and stuff like that. So I think that's I thought that came through really clearly in the art, and I'm glad that you feel the same way. But I don't know, have you beaten the game? Have you gotten through the entire thing?
No, I am not good enough at any video game, ironically, to to play through it. So, unfortunately.
So have you met the character Moon by any chance, which is at the end of Shoreline?
Yes.
She's like the first little robot iterator that you encounter.
Yes, I mean that is pretty earlier on. Then, yeah. I mean, after once things start speeding up for me, like once it's just like, oh no, this is happening. Oh no. I just sort of like, never mind. So yes.
No, that's fine. I just want to know where to spoil from, basically. The game's been out for 2 months. I haven't been able to like talk about actual like late game stuff, but even talking about Moon would be refreshing. So okay, the game is difficult. You're competing with all of these other creatures for resources. Like every getting to every new shelter is like a scramble, and you're like sweating by the time you get there. So eventually you meet this character, Moon, which is you experience like in this kind of broken down large structure, and she's kind of like the first peaceful character that you encounter. And sort of the first thing that happens is most players like steal her stuff and then eat them. And that kind of provides the fork in the game where we want to show players that there's consequences for their actions, and maybe like contextualize the previous few hours of experience for them, because from there, like you get very obvious visual tells that you're like hurting this unfortunate thing, and you go from being this kind of like victim of this dangerous world to now being sort of an aggressor that's actively harming some other peaceful creature. That's novel. I don't think that's really been seen much in games. I don't know, like as a mechanic, I think it's very challenging to do. But we wanted to do it anyways.
I mean, that's just another one of the aspects that make it unique, because most of the time, not even in platformers too, and just in gaming in general, if you are to help an NPC at any time, it's sort of just like for a set mission. Like it's just for like, I did this because they said, oh, help me, and I'll do whatever. And then that sort of just ends and cuts off there. So I thought it was like an interesting mechanic to include. I figured it would be difficult to sort of gauge that, because I mean the players completely have the choice to, so it sort of can alter it. And like, do you think it sort of like makes the game harder then to play in that more aggressive style the whole time, or it doesn't?
Oh, definitely. One thing that has been a really interesting thing to observe is that the people who like challenging games find this game really difficult, and the people who approach it game for a long time, and we would show it like PAX or E3 or things like that. And we had this thing happen all the time where you would have like this 12-year-old girl, 12 or 14-year-old girl would play the game because it's like a cute character, and she'd play it kind of from the perspective of the slug cat, which is like you're hiding, you see something that's dangerous on the screen, you hide, or you like sneak around it, and they'd be able to get really far in the game and do really well. And then immediately after them would be some like gamer bro who's like, you know, I've beaten like Super Meat Boy a million times, like I know games, I know platforms. They'd go in kind of with this aggressive attitude, and from their aggressive attitude, the ecosystem would then respond in kind, and they just get like destroyed over and over and over again. They'd like charge into a pack of lizards with a spear, and the lizards would just shred them. And they'd get really frustrated with the game because they just saw this like 12-year-old girl get like 5 times farther than they did. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know if I have anything to say about that, other than it was just like it's been a strange experience to watch that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they are. You're sort of you're like setting your own curve sort of deal once you depending on your style of play. So if you can sort of talk about the game and the assets. So the team at Video Cult completely built this game from scratch. So you know you're not going to search any game files and find, oh, this is from so and so, or this is created based on, you know, anything like that. So maybe you can sort of speak to like, what was it like? I mean, this is a long 5-year project. So what was it like, just sort of like in the increments? So like from the first year, then like to maybe like sort of the middle. Like how is it like from scratch? Because you don't hear that a lot from gaming.
No, and there's reasons for that, and the reason is that it's like really super hard, tedious, and like a thankless task. We would never ever do that again. You know, if like I have young developers or like people who are coming up in games, and they'll be like, James, like I want to do a game just like Rain World, and I'm like, no, you don't want to do it like that. So yeah, initially the game was written in this super old programming language called Lingo, which is one of the precursors to Flash. And there was no intelligent reason for doing that, other than it was the programming language that Jor was most comfortable with at the time, and he was making the game for himself and his little cousin. So he was just like, you know, whatever, I'll just mess around and create this game. Yeah. So after Kickstarter, which was like I think 2 years later, it was clear that there was a lot of interest in the game, and we would have to put it onto, you know, modern computers rather than, you know, some laptop from 1995. So we had to then take all of that game code and then move it into C#, and wrap it in Unity, so then we could then port it to PlayStation 4 and other things. So yeah, we had to basically make the same game 3 different times, essentially, or at least the initial game code before moving it on. Attention, developers of Earth, don't do that.
Well, yeah, too, and sort of like the open world too, when just in building the rooms that are in games. This one specifically has 1,600 rooms. Am I right about that? So
that was all this guy right here.
Yeah. So once you got to like room 1,000, where you're like, all right, what else could I possibly add to this? I mean,
you know, I could make more. Like, I love making this world so much. There's like all these kind of concepts to explore, and I really enjoy it. I have to say though, like, I definitely shot myself in the foot with this stuff, because I did the initial kind of got to that scale was because I did the first region at a certain size, and then from there, basically, like, that had to be the base unit of region sizes, and it got out of it. But I really wanted, so I'm a big fan of, like, like procedurally generated worlds. You know how in like a Minecraft or something like that, or even a No Man's Sky, like that scope where you're sort of exploring and really know where the game ends, like you kind of project into it. I sort of deeply love that experience, but I'm always extremely frustrated at the gray goo aspect, where like everything looks the same. Like in
Yeah.
No Man's Sky, for instance, is a very easy one to talk about because you have all of this like amazing generated terrain and stuff like that. But because of the limited pieces that are used, like after you see a couple of them, you've seen all of them.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
like a million variations on the same little things. So I wanted to do something that felt procedural in scope, where you felt like you could keep going into the game, but hand done.
Yeah.
Why did I think that was a good idea? But yeah, I don't know. I like it. I'm still really proud of how that aspect of the game turned out, because you can just spend like, I think even if you go through the game from start to finish, which is I think generally speaking like a 30-hour gameplay, maybe, to get to the quote unquote end of the narrative.
Yeah.
You've only explored maybe like a fifth of the world, so you can play 3 or 4 or 5 times and still not really see the full world. I find that to be, I really like that in games. I like replaying games.
Yeah, yeah.
I like going deep.
I want to talk a little bit. I mean, I know this isn't exactly your part, but the actual like design of Slugcat himself.
Oh, yeah.
What went into sort of? I know like the size of the character like directly affects the scope of the larger world, and then the color of him. I mean, just from what I got out of him being like this like sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like he has like he doesn't have like a real like expression. You can't like see that he's like really happy or excited about something or like really afraid. It's sort of this like blank look. Did you want him to be like a blank slate? Because he is, completely white. He just has, the main eyes and nose. Like, did you want him to be that like sort of like able to project?
Oh yeah, definitely. No, that's and that's all drawer. But yeah, I think like a big part of the game is that we don't want the character to be telling you anything. We want you to be projecting into the character. So there's minor movements, and you kind of read a lot into the little expressions, blinking, like a little bit of struggling, like looking around. And I think that allows you to be kind of in sync rather than. A lot about this game is that the game doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you the narrative. It doesn't tell you where to go. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to be feeling. And so you have to kind of feel your way through that. So I think I think that's a strong part of the game. I also think that's why people sort of connect with the character so much that they're buying plushies or all of that, is that it kind of, it's a blank slate for you to, it's like a mirror of yourself, essentially.
So, a little bit earlier too, you mentioned that that you really designed the game and like went after like some more ambitious aspects because it was what you saw weren't in other games that you like wanted to be in gaming. So maybe for some future developers out there who are listening right now, or maybe even students right now studying to like actually go into designing video games, what would be your advice for like following those ambitions, like even if it sounds like it might be like the long road,
I don't know. That's a good question. It's been interesting. We've done a lot of interviews. Well, as you've seen, over the years, and it's been really interesting. Like we'll have conversations with the same interviewers, like Twitch streamers or something like that from PAX. And it's been really interesting to have this conversation with them over time, because initially we came in and we were like we've got all these cool concepts that we want to do that we don't think people have seen before, and like why haven't other developers done these things? Like we're going to take it upon ourselves to do that. And of course over the years we learned why they don't do these things, and that's because it's like really difficult to do, and like balancing becomes a nightmare, and people don't like see like mechanics, like the average player is never going to see them, so you end up working for months on something that like maybe 2% of the player base is going to see. So those are that's the reason. So my advice would be that like if you feel really strongly about this stuff to the degree that you're willing to only have it be seen by 2% of the people, and have IGN reviewers bounce off after 2 hours of a 60-hour experience, then I would say go for it. Like if you feel really strongly about it and it's worth it to you as an artist, go for it. But it's not going to generally benefit the game. I don't think. Like, it's not going to... Most people aren't going to play these things and see these things. They're going to see the limited scope that they play the game at. But if you're fine with having an indie, like a cult following of super enthusiastic, crazy gamers following you around, then go for it. We have this Discord, like the Rainbow Discord, which is a madness. Like, we put in all this stuff into the game where we sort of expected that, like, maybe over of gamers really dedicated would figure this stuff out, figure like some of the super deep lore aspects out, like over the span of like a couple of months or something like that. And these people like hacked the code to like find the clues to like put all these pieces together. So I think there is a really dedicated gaming base. It's niche, it's small. Like the people that are going to be interested in the really ambitious aspects is 5% of the gaming population. So if you're happy with appealing to that, if those are your people, then go for it. But if you want to like satisfy Joe Steam Gamer 976B, then I would say maybe focus on one of the ambitious aspects rather than like 10 of the ambitious aspects.
When we showed clips at the top of the show through games like The Last of Us, in comparison to movies that may not have hit the mark, it should show you that as valued as they are and protected as they are, so too should video gaming, and the debate should have ended a long time ago.
I'm sitting on the couch like a couch potato, playing Super Mario, Battlefield, and Halo. Got my headset on, I'm right where I belong. When I want Mountain Dew, I just yell for my mom. Play me old school, new school, even Atari. I'll beat your high score and I won't even say sorry. My friends call me a nerd, I tell you that's absurd.